My name is Layla. The evening of my 18th birthday was supposed to be the first day of my real life. I imagined a cake, candles, the laughter of friends. But my older sister Olivia, as always, found a way to make this evening hers. I stood in the center of the living room, full of guests, and watched as all eyes were turned to her. She had just announced her little surprise, news that instantly erased the very fact of my existence. I saw the smug smile on her face and the knowing looks of our parents. This wasn't just a ruined party. This was the final act of a play in which I had played the role of scenery my whole life. But this time, something changed. As they bathed in the rays of her glory, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I quietly went up to my room, packed a bag that, as it turned out, my inner voice had been preparing for a long time, and walked out the back door. They probably didn't even notice right away that I was gone. They didn't understand that my quiet role in this family wasn't just about being in the shadows. My role was to keep their main, darkest secret. And, leaving that night, I decided that I had had enough. I would no longer be their cover. To everyone who looked at us from the outside, we were the embodiment of the American dream, a large house in an elite suburb of Dallas, a perfectly manicured lawn, and the latest SUV by the garage. But this glossy cover hid a completely different story. My mother, Eleanor, was a brilliant marketer, and she perceived our family as her main project. Our life was an endless stream of content for her social media, professionally shot holidays, posts about our successes polished to the last word, staged photos from our walks. She was the director of our little family show and created an illusion of a perfect life, in which, it seemed, she herself believed. I still remember her voice during the photo shoot for a Christmas card. "Layla, move closer to Olivia," she would tell the photographer, and then, turning to me, she would hiss, "Portray happiness. We must look like a perfect family." My father, David, was more of a financial sponsor in our lives than a parent. He worked as an investment banker, disappearing at the office for 70 hours a week, and his presence at home was purely physical. At the slightest hint of conflict, he would either bury his face in his tablet or simply leave for his study, throwing his signature phrase over his shoulder, "Girls, sort it out yourselves." And there was Olivia, my sister, who was only 2 years older than me but was an eternity ahead in the art of manipulation. From early childhood, Olivia learned that dramatic tears and loud tantrums were the shortest path to getting what she wanted. And our parents, for whom a crack in the family's perfect facade was more frightening than any scandal, always gave in to her. "She is just very sensitive," my mother would say, justifying another of Olivia's whims. And then she would turn to me, "You're the younger one, Layla. Be smarter, give in." Thus, without wanting it, I became the guardian of peace in our family. I understood very early on that the calmness in the house directly depended on Olivia's mood. I learned to give in to her in everything. I gave her my toys, agreed to watch movies she liked, and kept silent when she passed off my ideas as her own. My own desires were sacrificed for the sake of a fragile family truce. This pattern, established in childhood, only strengthened over the years. When I was 10, my parents promised me a trip to the Six Flags amusement park for my birthday. I counted the days to this event. But the evening before, Olivia suddenly had a stomach ache. She moaned so theatrically that my mother immediately cancelled the trip. "Sorry, sweetie," she said, avoiding my gaze. "Olivia is so sick, we can't leave her." The trip was never rescheduled. And a couple of days later, I accidentally overheard Olivia bragging to a friend on the phone that she had just pretended to be sick because she didn't want the whole day to revolve only around Layla. Middle school graduation was supposed to be my day. I had worked hard for a good transcript. But, by pure coincidence, Olivia had a dance performance that same evening. "We'll try to make it to both," my father told me, "but you know how important dance is to her." In the end, they sat through my ceremony, constantly glancing at their watches. My mother left early to help Olivia with her costume. And after the diplomas were handed out, While other graduates were taking pictures with their parents, I was hurriedly put into the car so as not to be late for her concert. In the end, I spent my graduation in the audience, watching my sister dance on stage to the enthusiastic applause of my parents. But perhaps the most vivid omen of the future was my 16th birthday. I threw a small party at home with my closest friends. And for a while, it seemed to me that this celebration was truly mine. But in the middle of the party, as I was opening gifts, Olivia burst into tears. The reason? She wanted gifts too. Her tears grew louder and louder until all the guests fell silent, awkwardly staring at her. "Layla, maybe you could open our gift," my mother hissed, nervously glancing at the neighbors. "It's actually for both of you." Thus, my new laptop, which I had been so looking forward to, turned into a shared computer which, a week later, permanently settled in Olivia's room. My birthday turned into an evening of consoling my sister. And yet, despite all these years of experience, for some reason, I was sure that my 18th birthday would be different. After all, it was an important milestone. The day you officially become an adult. And in my head, it was the first day of my life when I wouldn't have to give in and shrink myself so as not to overshadow my sister, Olivia. This time everything will be different, I convinced myself, starting to plan the party several months in advance. This time I will finally have my own day. As winter began to give way to spring, and my April birthday grew closer, I threw myself headfirst into the preparations. This celebration was meant to be not just another birthday. It was meant to be my statement about myself. Unlike previous years, when my parents decided everything for me, this time I took everything under my control. I worked 20 hours a week at the Bookish Armadillo, a cozy independent bookstore not far from our house, and managed to save almost $3,000. This time, I was my own master. I didn't need to ask them for money and, therefore, give them a say in what my party would be like. I started searching for the perfect venue, aiming to find something cozy and soulful, not just expensive and pretentious. After a few viewings, I found it, a private room at the Rustic Grape, a charming Italian restaurant with brick walls and a ceiling hung with twinkling lights. The owner, Mrs. Henderson, personally showed me everything. "You only turn 18 once in a lifetime," she said with a warm smile. "We will do everything to make this evening special for you." The room was designed for 30 people, perfect for my plan. Unlike Olivia, who collected friends on social media, I valued a small circle of truly close people. I made a list of 15 names. These were the people who had supported me all these years. My best friend, Sarah, helped me create simple but very stylish electronic invitations. We designed them in the theme of a starry sky because I had been interested in astronomy since childhood. "An evening under the stars in honor of Layla's 18th birthday," the inscription read. I felt goosebumps run down my spine when I saw my name in the center, not shared with anyone else. "This is going to be the best evening," Sarah said as we sent out the invitations. "You, more than anyone, deserve to have at least one day in your life dedicated only to you." I even ordered my dream cake from a local pastry shop. It was two-tiered, covered in dark blue icing with a scattering of silver stars. The pastry chef promised he could embed tiny edible lights that would twinkle like real constellations. It cost more than I had planned, but I decided that you only turn 18 once. 3 months before the party, I chose a moment when Olivia was at a friend's house and approached my parents with a ready plan. I laid out a folder on the kitchen table with photos of the restaurant, menu options, and a detailed budget. My mother flipped through the pages with polite interest. "Everything looks very nice, Layla, but maybe it would be better to have the party in our backyard? You would save a lot of money." "I've already paid the deposit," I answered firmly. "I saved up specifically for this. It's important to me that this day is special." My father, who had been on his phone until then, looked up. "The plan looks well thought out. And you earned it all yourself. That's a responsible approach. I approve." "What about Olivia?" my mother asked. She'll surely want to participate in the planning. I was ready for this question. She is, of course, invited. But this is my party, with my friends. I'm sure she'll understand. My mother didn't look entirely convinced, but she nodded anyway. All right. If you need anything, let me know. Although, if I were you, I would choose blue napkins, not silver. It would be better for Instagram. It wasn't the support I had dreamed of, but it was an agreement. And that was enough for me. The weeks went by, and my excitement grew. I bought myself the perfect dress of dark blue, with a scattering of tiny sequins, in which I felt grown-up and confident. I made an appointment to have my hair styled and even learned to do makeup that emphasized my eyes. The evening before my birthday, I laid out everything I had prepared on my bed: the dress, new shoes, small star-shaped earrings that I got from my grandmother. Everything was ready. And at that moment, I heard Olivia's familiar, whining voice from downstairs. But it's so boring, just sitting and watching Layla open her presents, she complained to our parents. The whole evening all the attention will be on her. I didn't hear what they answered, but I could easily imagine it. The same persuasions, the same desire to calm her down, just to avoid a conflict. My stomach clenched, but I forced myself to push away the bad thoughts. Not this time, I whispered. Tomorrow is my day. The morning of my 18th birthday was clear and sunny. I woke up with a feeling that today everything would be different. I'm officially 18, I whispered, smiling at the ceiling. In the kitchen, our main family tradition was waiting for me: my dad's signature pancakes, decorated with strawberries arranged in the shape of the number 18. He did this every year, and this simple but sincere gesture filled me with warmth. Here's the birthday girl, Dad announced solemnly, placing a plate in front of me. 18 years. I can't believe it. My mother looked up from her phone to give me a quick kiss on the cheek. Happy birthday, dear. I already posted a collage of your childhood photos. It's getting a lot of likes. I glanced at her screen. There was my baby picture with the caption, "How time flies. My baby is already 18. #girlmom #birthday. She was completely absorbed in replying to comments, paying no attention to the real, now adult daughter sitting right in front of her. The last one to deign to appear in the kitchen was Olivia, although it was almost 10 in the morning. She mumbled something like "happy birthday," then collapsed onto a chair with a heavy sigh and stared at her phone. A minute later, she sighed even louder, clearly expecting someone to ask her what was wrong. When no one reacted, she changed tactics. I got another rejection yesterday, she announced loudly. From the University of Southern California. They wrote that I had a strong application, but there were no spots. Oh, my sunshine, my mother immediately put down her phone, and all her attention shifted to Olivia. I'm so sorry. It's their loss, honestly. We still have 3 better universities in reserve, my father encouraged her. I silently finished my pancakes. I was so used to any conversation eventually turning to Olivia that I no longer paid attention. Today, it didn't bother me. After breakfast, I spent a whole hour blissfully getting ready for my party. I styled my hair, did my makeup, and put on my new dress. Looking at my reflection in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. I saw not a quiet girl who was afraid to take up too much space, but a young, self-confident woman ready to make a statement. At that moment, my phone vibrated. A message from Sarah: "Happy birthday, Queen. Can't wait for tonight to celebrate. Love you." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. This is what birthdays should be like. We arrived at the Rustic Grape half an hour before the start. Mrs. Henderson had kept her word. The room was decorated exactly as I had dreamed. Tiny lights twinkled among the dark blue and silver decor. In the corner stood a table for gifts, and in the center was a small space for dancing. My cake, even more beautiful than in the picture, held a place of honor on a separate pedestal. Perfect, I whispered, looking around. Not bad, I heard Olivia's voice behind me. She walked right up to the cake and ran her finger over one of the edible stars. Although, I would have chosen something more sophisticated. Don't you think you've outgrown the stars theme? Before I could answer, Sarah burst into the room with a huge gift box. Birthday girl, she exclaimed, hugging me tightly. Layla, you look stunning. That dress was made for you. Following her, my other friends began to arrive, Emily and Jacob from school, Sophia and Ben from the bookstore. Each guest brought warm hugs and sincere compliments, and I felt truly happy. My parents politely chatted with my friends' parents who had dropped by, while my mom discreetly took pictures for her future perfect social media post. Olivia, however, settled at a table in the corner and was either furiously typing something on her phone or surveying the room with a heavy, judgmental gaze. The first hour of the party flew by in an instant. We enjoyed delicious food, laughed while reminiscing about school stories, and my friends took turns giving toasts that made me smile shyly. For a whole hour, I was the center of attention, surrounded by people who loved and valued me for who I am. When the plates were cleared from the tables, Mrs. Henderson dimmed the lights in the room, making the garland lights shine even brighter. Time for the cake, she winked at me. It was at that moment I noticed that Olivia had disappeared somewhere. Looking around the room, I saw her in the far corner. She was whispering intensely with our mother about something. On my mother's face, surprise was replaced by delight, and Olivia was smiling that same smile of hers that sent a chill down my spine. I knew that smile. With it, she had once announced to the whole class that I was still afraid to sleep without a light on. My mother quickly whispered something to my father, and he raised his eyebrows in surprise. They both looked at Olivia with a pride that I had never seen directed at me. My insides clenched. At that moment, Mrs. Henderson and her assistants brought out my magnificent cake with 18 lit candles. My friends crowded around, ready to film on their phones. Make a wish, Layla. Emily shouted. As everyone sang happy birthday, I closed my eyes, preparing to blow out the candles. The song ended, and I took a deep breath. And just as I leaned towards the cake, Olivia's loud, confident voice cut through the silence. Wait. Olivia's voice sounded loud and confident. Before Layla makes a wish, I have a small announcement. All attention instantly switched from me to her, just as she wanted. Olivia stepped into the center of the circle, theatrically clutching her phone to her chest. I wasn't planning on talking about this until next week, she began, her voice trembling with perfectly rehearsed emotion, but I just received an email, and I just can't keep quiet anymore. She paused, savoring the moment. My candles continued to burn, and drops of wax were already falling onto the cake. I've been accepted for early admission to Yale University. Her voice turned into a joyful shriek. With a full scholarship. They wrote that my essay was one of the best they've read in recent years. The room erupted in congratulations. My parents immediately rushed to Olivia, my mother in tears, my father beaming with pride. They squeezed her in their arms while my friends awkwardly shifted from foot to foot by the cake, not knowing what to do next. Yale. Can you just imagine? My mother repeated loudly. My girl is going to Yale. Sarah caught my eye from across the room. Her face expressed a mixture of sympathy and righteous anger. She silently mouthed, "What was that?" I just gave a tired shrug. This was classic Olivia. And no one, except me, seemed to notice. That's amazing news, Olivia, I forced myself to smile. And now, maybe I can finally blow out the candles before the cake melts? Oh, yes, of course, dear, my mother said distractedly, not letting go of Olivia. But just think. Yale. I leaned over and blew out all 18 candles in one breath. I didn't make a wish. What was the point? While Mrs. Henderson distributed the cake to the guests, Olivia continued her one-woman show. She stood in the center of the room and rapturously told how she opened that very email, how she screamed with joy, how it had been the dream of her life. "I even got a call from the admissions office," she declared. At the same time, as I noticed, she never showed anyone that coveted email on her phone. They said they almost never give a full scholarship, but my application was simply exceptional. My friends desperately tried to get the party back on track, bringing me their gifts. But as soon as someone started talking about my future plans, Olivia would immediately insert another detail about Yale, raising her voice until all the attention shifted back to her. The culmination of her performance was a sudden burst of tears. I'm so overwhelmed with emotion," she sobbed, covering her face with her hands while my mother rushed to hug her. "I worked so hard for this, sleepless nights, volunteering. I just can't believe it finally happened." Her tears, as always, worked flawlessly. My father once again drew everyone's attention by raising his glass for a toast. I naively hoped until the very end that it would be a toast in my honor. "I want to raise this glass," he began, beaming, "to achievements that are truly worth celebrating. To Yale University, which will soon welcome an outstanding young lady, Olivia, into its ranks. Her perseverance and talent have opened this incredible opportunity for her, and her mother and I are proud of her to the depths of our souls." Then, as if remembering something unimportant, he added, "And to Layla on her 18th birthday. May there be successes in your life too." My friends exchanged awkward glances. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table, a silent gesture of support that nearly shattered my fragile composure. "Let's celebrate the successes of both our girls today," my mother exclaimed, beaming with joy. "Mrs. Henderson, is there any way to add the inscription 'Congratulations, Olivia' to the cake?" Before the restaurant owner could answer, Olivia herself intervened. "Mommy, that's so sweet, but today is Layla's day. I don't want to take the attention away from her." This false modesty was the pinnacle of her craft. "Nonsense," my mother insisted. "Today we celebrate the successes of both our daughters." I remember the rest of the evening as if in a fog. On my beautiful cake now flaunted a clumsy, hastily made inscription, "And Olivia too." My parents nodded distractedly as I opened my presents, immediately returning to the discussion of the weather in New Haven and the prestige of Yale University. By 9 o'clock, my 3-hour party was essentially over. My friends, apologizing, began to leave, hugging me a little longer than usual on their way out. "Text me when you get home," Sarah whispered to me. "We need to talk about this." The ride home was excruciating. My parents sat in the front and animatedly discussed Olivia's future in Connecticut, completely oblivious to my icy silence in the back seat. Olivia sat next to me, occasionally throwing triumphant glances at me when our parents weren't looking. "We'll need to visit New Haven before school starts," my father was saying. "To see the campus, look at the area." Of course, my mother agreed. "I'll start looking for hotels today. We could have a little family vacation in August." During the entire ride home, neither of them mentioned my birthday once. No one asked if I enjoyed my party. It was as if the whole thing had been arranged for Olivia's sake from the beginning, and my 18th birthday was just a convenient pretext. Just as we got home, Olivia's phone came to life. "Wow, Becky says the news about my acceptance to Yale is already in all the group chats," she announced with a smile. "Our future star," my mother replied with pride. I didn't say a word, just went to my room. Only when I was alone did I allow myself to cry, releasing the tension of the whole evening. It was then that I heard her voice through the wall. She was talking to someone on the phone. The timing was perfect, she laughed. You should have seen her face when her ridiculous party faded into the background, and everyone started congratulating me. It was unforgettable. Then she paused. "No, the official response hasn't come yet. It will arrive in a couple of months. But by the time they figure anything out, everyone will have already forgotten this little trick." I sat on the edge of my bed in a complete daze. The confirmation of my suspicions was like a blow. Olivia had deliberately made it all up to ruin my party. And my parents, in their blind adoration, hadn't even bothered to question such a fortunate coincidence or ask to see the letter itself. That night, I lay awake for a long time, looking at the old, glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling since childhood. And there, in the silence, I made a decision. This was the last time Olivia would steal my celebration. The last time my parents would ignore me for her theatrical performances. The last time I would silently agree to a supporting role in my own family. When I finally fell asleep, a plan was already forming in my mind. My 18th birthday had been ruined, but in return, it had given me something much more valuable: crystal clarity and firm resolve. The resolve to finally be free. The morning after my failed birthday, I woke up with a sense of determination I had never known before. While everyone in the house was still asleep, I opened my laptop and created a new document titled Escape Plan. This was not an impulsive decision. It was the result of long years spent in the shadows. My 18th birthday was just the final proof that nothing would change unless I changed everything myself. The first item on the plan was housing. I started looking through rental listings and quickly faced a harsh reality: apartments in Dallas were completely out of my price range with my bookstore salary. My impulse for independence would have to be tempered with practicality. I texted Sarah, "Can we meet?" Just not at my house. We met at a coffee shop a couple of blocks away. I recounted everything that had happened without much emotion and finished with the phrase, "I'm moving out. I can't do this anymore." Sarah didn't look surprised. "It's about time, honestly. Where are you thinking of moving?" "That's the problem. I can't afford to rent an apartment alone yet." Sarah thought for a moment, stirring the foam on her cappuccino. "Listen, remember my parents converted our garage into a small studio for my grandma? It's been empty since she moved to Florida. It's not a palace, of course, but it has its own bathroom and a small kitchen." "Are you serious? Do you think they would agree to rent it to me?" "Rent?" Sarah was even offended. "Layla, you're like a second daughter to them. Let me talk to them. I'm sure they'd be happy to have you stay until you get on your feet." That same evening, Sarah called back. Her parents agreed. I could live in their studio for 3 months completely free, and then we could agree on a symbolic rent. This was much more than I could have dreamed of. The first point of my plan was complete. The next step was money. I went to a different bank, where my parents didn't have accounts, opened a new account in my name, and transferred all my savings into it. Then I spoke with my manager at the bookish Armadillo. I didn't go into detail, just explained that my circumstances had changed. "I need more work hours," I said. "The maximum possible amount that I can balance with my studies." "I can offer you 30 hours a week," she replied. "And by the way, our children's literature specialist is leaving in June. That will be a full-time position, with health insurance. But then you'll have to postpone starting college." The thought hadn't occurred to me, but it was very sensible. "I'm ready to take the extra hours right now," I said. "And I would like to apply for the full-time position as soon as it's available." Having sorted out housing and work, I moved on to the most difficult part: the move. Over the next 3 weeks, I slowly and discreetly moved my life out of my parents' house. Every day, I took a bag of things with me, supposedly for work, but in reality, I took them to Sarah's. Books, clothes, that very jewelry box from my grandmother. Little by little, everything that was dear to me moved to a safe place. My parents noticed nothing. My mother was absorbed in organizing a dinner party in honor of Olivia's acceptance to Yale. My father, as usual, was lost at work. And Olivia was busy with her bustling social life and making up new excuses for why she still hadn't received any documents from Yale. In mid-May, just before graduation, I found a place. a tiny studio not far from the bookish armadillo. There was just enough space for a bed and a desk, but the rent was affordable if I moved to full-time work. I signed the lease starting June 1st, giving almost all my savings for the deposit. The last weeks of school flew by in a blur. I pretended everything was normal, while mentally I was already saying goodbye to my old life. I even skipped the graduation party, telling my parents I would prefer a quiet family dinner. I just couldn't bear another celebration that would inevitably turn into a benefit performance for Olivia. D-Day, May 28th, turned out to be surprisingly favorable. Olivia had been whining for weeks that she needed new clothes for Yale, and my mother finally gave in, promising her a day of shopping followed by dinner at her favorite restaurant. My father, as luck would have it, had an important partners meeting that Saturday. "Are you sure you'll be okay here alone, Layla?" my mother asked, already mentally at the mall. "Of course," I replied. "I have a ton of books I need to read." As soon as their car was out of sight, I sprang into action. Sarah arrived with her brother in their old SUV, and we quickly loaded the last boxes. My reading lamp, the rest of my clothes, a photo of my grandparents. Everything that still connected me to this house. While they took the first batch of things to my new studio, I sat down at the kitchen table and wrote a short note. "Mom, Dad, and Olivia, I've moved out. I'm safe, staying with friends temporarily. My phone will be on, but I need some personal space right now. Please respect my decision. Layla." I left the note in the most conspicuous place. And then, for the last time, I walked through the empty rooms of the house where I grew up. Every object here held memories, both good and bad. In my nearly empty bedroom, I touched the height marks on the doorframe, ran my hand over the faded spot from a poster on the wall. I didn't feel sadness. Rather, it was like a snake shedding an old, too tight skin. At 18, most teenagers leave for college. My path was different, but it led to the same result, the beginning of a new, independent life, built on my own decisions. The front door closed behind me with a quiet click. No drama, no tearful goodbyes. Just the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Sarah was waiting for me in the car. I got into the passenger seat without a single glance back. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded silently, feeling a lump rise in my throat. Ready or not, I had just taken the first, irreversible step toward my freedom. My new studio was tiny but bright. The previous tenants had left a futon that served as both my sofa and bed, and Sarah's family gave me a small kitchen table. My books filled several crates that I turned on their sides to create a makeshift bookshelf. It wasn't much, but it was mine. In the evening, as I expected, my phone exploded. First, around 6, confused messages from my mom started pouring in. By 7, they had turned into angry demands to call back immediately. By 8, my father had joined in, his messages a mix of concern and fury. Olivia wrote only once, and her message was laughably predictable. Great way to steal all the attention from my Yale news. Bravo, little sister. I sent my parents only one short message. "I'm okay. I just need time. I'll contact you when I'm ready." After that, I turned off my phone, curled up on my futon, and for the first time in years, fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. The first week flew by in a hustle. I worked a lot and slowly settled into my new nest. I only turned my phone on for a few minutes in the evening to make sure I hadn't missed anything important and to let my parents know I was okay. Their messages during this time changed in tone from angry to pleading, with vague promises to discuss everything and change everything. Sarah kept me updated on what was happening in my absence. According to rumors that reached her through our mutual friend Kate, whose mom was in the same book club as mine, my disappearance had caused the exact effect my parents had feared so much. It had ruined their perfect picture. "Your mom canceled her annual brunch for the graduates' parents," Sarah told me as we ate pizza on the floor of my new studio. "She told everyone you had unforeseen family circumstances." Now rumors are spreading all over town. I felt a slight pang of guilt but immediately suppressed it. I hadn't created this problem. I had just stopped being its solution. Meanwhile, my little apartment was slowly becoming a real home. I found a second-hand dresser in a social media group. The owner of the bookstore gave me a floor lamp with a small defect. And Sarah's mom brought me dishes and kitchen utensils. With each new item, this space became more and more mine. Working full-time at the bookish Armadillo turned out to be surprisingly pleasant. My boss entrusted me with redesigning the entire children's section, and for the first time in my life, my ideas were valued and brought to life. "You have a real gift for this," she said when the summer reading display I designed doubled our sales. "Have you thought about going to college for design?" This question reminded me that I had postponed my admission until the spring. And now, this decision seemed not like a failure, but an opportunity to understand what I really want. 2 months after I moved out, I received news about my family from someone other than Sarah. On a Sunday, my old friend Emily, who lived next door to my parents, texted me. "I don't know if this is important to you, but there's a huge scandal at your house right now. I can hear your mom yelling at Olivia from my yard. Something about Yale." I wasn't surprised. Olivia's lie couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, someone was bound to ask why she still hadn't received any documents from the university. That same evening, a call came from my father's number. It was the first time he had called instead of just texting. After hesitating, I answered. "Layla," his voice sounded tired and somehow old. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Dad. I've rented an apartment, I'm working full-time, and I'm taking care of myself." A long pause followed. "That's good. I'm glad to hear that." He fell silent again. "Things here are not easy right now." I waited, not rushing to comfort him as I would have before. The story with Olivia's admission to Yale, it turned out to be untrue. She made it all up. He spoke as if he hadn't quite believed it himself yet. "Your mother found out when she called the university to ask about some documents." "I know," I replied calmly. "I heard her admit it herself on the phone the night of my birthday." A heavy silence hung on the other end of the line. "You knew?" he finally asked. "Why didn't you say anything?" The question was so absurd that I barely suppressed a laugh. "And would you have believed me? Dad, have you ever in your life believed me, and not Olivia?" His silence was more eloquent than any words. "I have to go," I said. "I have to get up early for work tomorrow." "Layla, wait. Your mother, she's taking all of this very hard. You leaving, and now this story with Olivia. She's very depressed right now." I immediately recognized that old, familiar trick. A hidden request to come home, to fix everything, to once again become the responsible and invisible girl who solves all the problems. "I'm very sorry to hear that," I answered sincerely but firmly. "But I can't come and fix everything. This time, you and Mom will have to handle this yourselves." After hanging up, I sat on my futon for a long time, looking at the single flower on the windowsill. For the first time, I felt not just relief at being far away from it all. I felt pride. Pride in being able to defend my boundaries. In the following weeks, through the grapevine, details of what happened next reached me. It turned out that Olivia's lie about Yale was exposed in the loudest and most humiliating way for my mother. She herself called the university's admissions office to ask why they hadn't yet received the documents for moving into the dorms. The embarrassment was monumental. My mother had already managed to trumpet Olivia's brilliant success to her entire social circle, write several boastful posts on social media, and even order a car sticker for herself that said Yale Mom. Without me, the one who always smoothed over all the rough edges, Olivia's tantrums apparently got out of control. As Kate told me, Olivia was caught trying to hack the school's database to change her grades. This led to a probationary sentence and jeopardized her chances of getting into any decent college. My mother, whose life was built around a perfect image, couldn't handle such shame. My father vaguely called it an emotional breakdown, after which she sought therapy for the first time in her life. Her polished social media accounts fell silent. My father, in turn, began to disappear at work until late at night. Rumors reached me that he was often seen at a bar with one of his colleagues, but I tried not to pay it any mind. 3 months after I moved out, my father came to my workplace. He looked thinner, and the wrinkles around his eyes had deepened. "Your manager said I could talk to you during your break," he said awkwardly, standing by the cash register of the bookish Armadillo. We sat down at a table in the small cafe attached to the store, like two strangers. "I decided we need to talk," he began. "Things are very complicated at home right now." I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Your mother and I are thinking about living separately. For a while." He stared into his coffee cup as if searching for answers there. "After this whole story with Olivia and you leaving, we realized that we've been turning a blind eye to our own problems for too long." I nodded silently. I wasn't surprised. Their marriage had always been more like a business partnership for maintaining an image than a union of two loving people. "Olivia has also started seeing a therapist. They recommended it at the community college," he added. He looked up at me. "The therapist suggested a joint family session. Would you want to?" "I'm not ready yet," I answered honestly. "Maybe someday. But not now." He nodded. It was clear he was disappointed, but this time he didn't press. "I understand." He paused for a moment. "I've thought a lot about your birthday. About how we let Olivia ruin everything again. How we always did. I'm sorry, Layla. You deserved so much more." This was the apology I had been waiting for many years. But hearing it, I didn't feel relief. This was just the beginning of a long journey, and words alone couldn't fix years of injustice. "Thank you, Dad," I replied. It was important for me to hear that. As my father was about to leave, he asked the question I had been expecting. "Will you come home? Your mother misses you. We all miss you." I shook my head. "This isn't about punishment. I'm not punishing you, or Mom, or Olivia. I'm just building my own life. I needed to leave to finally understand who I am when I'm not busy solving your problems." "And who are you?" he asked, and for the first time, genuine interest sounded in his voice. I smiled. The answer came surprisingly easily. "I don't know yet. But I really like who I'm becoming." A year after that birthday, my life was unrecognizable. My small studio had turned into a cozy nest, furnished with second-hand but vibrant furniture and filled with books. It was a space that reflected me, not the expectations of others. My promotion at the bookish Armadillo brought me a small raise and, most importantly, health insurance. I started taking a few courses at the local community college, studying business and design fundamentals. Working with the display windows had uncovered a new talent in me. My boss even started hinting at the possibility of training for an assistant manager position in the future, a career path I hadn't considered before, but which now seemed very attractive to me. But most importantly, I finally began to build relationships based on sincere affection, not on a sense of duty or manipulation. My friendship with Sarah was still the pillar of my life, but now I had other close people too, colleagues from work and friends from college. They knew me simply as Layla, not as Olivia's little sister. Our relationship with my family began to slowly thaw, but I kept my distance. 6 months after I left, I finally agreed to have lunch with my mother at a neutral restaurant. The woman in front of me was nothing like the image-obsessed mother I remembered. She seemed smaller. As if all her former self-confidence had drained away. "The house feels so empty without you," she admitted after an awkward pause. I never realized that you were the center that held us all together. That's ironic, I replied. Because for most of my life, I felt invisible in that house. She didn't argue, just flinched. I'm working a lot with a therapist now, trying to understand our unhealthy family dynamic. My own need for everything to look perfect instead of being real. From that day on, we started meeting for lunch once a month. At first, the conversations were strained, but over time we began to build something new, a relationship based on who we had become, not on who we used to be. She started asking me real questions about my life. And, most strikingly, she actually listened. With my father, we found common ground through books. He had always loved to read before work completely consumed him. Once, in a phone conversation, I mentioned a novel I liked, and the following week, he read it too. Our conversations about characters and plot became a safe way for us to start communicating again. It allowed us to reconnect without directly touching on the painful topics that we both were not yet ready for. The hardest part was with Olivia. Her initial reaction to my departure was ridiculously self-centered. How could you do this to me? What will people at school think of me now? But over time, something began to change. Maybe it was therapy, or maybe she was just growing up. Notes of self-reflection started to appear in her messages. 9 months after I moved out, a message came from her. I'm sorry about your birthday. My therapist helped me understand how terribly I acted then. I replied politely but reservedly. I was grateful for the apology, but one message couldn't erase years of selfishness. Our reconciliation, if it was meant to happen, would require much more time and real proof that she had changed. In April, on the eve of my 19th birthday, an unexpected invitation came from my mother. She suggested having a family dinner at a restaurant of my choice to celebrate. Just the 4 of us, she wrote. No other relatives, no show. I hesitated for a long time, remembering last year's fiasco. But after talking with my own therapist, another important acquisition of my new life, I decided to agree, but on my own terms. I would like that, I replied to my mom, but only if everyone remembers that this is my birthday. No big announcements, no surprises, no drama. The dinner was set for Saturday. I celebrated my actual birthday with those who had become my real family, with Sarah and her parents, with colleagues from the bookstore, and new friends. We ate cake and laughed in my little studio, its walls now adorned with photos of my new, happy life. On Saturday evening, I arrived at the small French bistro I had chosen myself. It was a neutral place, with no memories attached. I came early to gather my thoughts. My mother was the first to arrive. She timidly hugged me and handed me a small, beautifully wrapped gift. A few minutes later, my father appeared, his hug more confident. Olivia was the last to arrive. She was noticeably nervous, which was very unlike her. Happy belated birthday, Layla, she said, handing me a gift bag. I picked this out myself. Without Mom and Dad's help. To someone else, these words might have sounded strange, but to me, they were a revelation. Olivia, who had relied on our parents her whole life, had done something independently for the first time. This was real progress. Dinner began with awkward conversations about the weather and the menu, but gradually the conversation became more sincere. My mom asked about my college courses without trying to criticize my choice. My dad was interested in my apartment without hinting that it was time for me to come home. And Olivia, most surprisingly, listened when I spoke, instead of just waiting for her turn to interject. When they brought us dessert with a single lit candle, my mother took a deep breath. Layla, we'd like to say something. And it's not another big announcement, she added hastily, noticing how I tensed up. It's an acknowledgement. My father took her hand. We failed you, he said simply. We allowed a wrong, painful dynamic for you to develop in our family. And we turned a blind eye to it because it was easier. But I was the worst of all, Olivia said, looking at her plate. I knew exactly what I was doing when I pulled all the attention to myself. It gave me a sense of power, and I didn't care how you felt. We can't turn back time, my mother continued. But we want you to know, we see things differently now. And we are all working on ourselves to become better. For ourselves, for each other, and for our relationship with you. Whatever that may be. I didn't think I would cry, but tears streamed down my cheeks on their own. These were not tears of resentment for a ruined party. It was something else, grief for what our family could have been, relief that the truth was finally spoken out loud, and a fragile hope for the future. Thank you, was all I could manage to say. It was very important for me to hear that. We didn't solve all our problems that evening. One dinner couldn't erase years of wrong behavior. But it was a beginning. A foundation for a new, more honest and healthy family. Returning to my apartment with gifts in my hands, I thought about what a strange journey I had been on since that failed birthday. My sister's tantrum was the last straw, but looking back, I realize it was also a kind of gift. The very push I so desperately needed to finally start living my own life. Sometimes the bravest act is not a loud scandal, but a quiet departure. A departure to build the life you truly deserve. Now I understand that my failed 18th birthday was actually the best gift. The very push that made me find my voice, my boundaries, and myself. I still have the entry I made in my journal the night I moved out. These words have become my personal mantra: your value does not depend on how others treat you. Your peace should not depend on someone else's chaos. Your life belongs only to you. A year later, these words ring truer than ever. By leaving, I made space not only for myself but for them as well. Their perfect world may have crumbled when I stopped propping it up. But it was on those ruins that something new and healthier had a chance to grow. And what about you? Have you ever had to leave a toxic situation to find yourself? Tell your story in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please support the channel with a like and a subscription. There are many more stories ahead about finding strength in the darkest of times. Thank you for walking this path with me. And remember, sometimes the hardest decisions lead us to the best places.